Back. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May peace be upon you. Greetings and welcome to Ramadan Unscripted. This is genuinely unscripted. We started just a few minutes early, but not formally, just to make sure that everything was working. And we were told that this is working. And so now it's a formal start. And before we get into the program, here's a brief welcome video.
The mission and vision of the American Islamic College, to me, pretty much now synonymous with the work. I believe in the transformative power of education, and not just education that is informative, but in education that is transformative, education that really changes how we live. But I think that the Muslims of America need a place that they can come as a Muslim space. This is their space. It belongs to them.
All right. Yeah, that gets us right into it. So welcome, everyone. This is Ramadan Unscripted. We started this space for people who are already observant but looking for something different, or people who feel alienated but really want something more from the month, to give them a space to come. You're in the YouTube live section. If you're logged in, you can make comments and ask questions. And we'll look at the questions and see if we can engage. So this can be an interactive forum. But Ramadan is primarily thought of as a month of fast, a month in which we abstain from food and drink during between the crack of dawn and sunset, and abstain from other things as well, lying, cheating, backbiting, which we should avoid anyways, but particularly so in this month. But what we often forget is that Ramadan is actually a month of the Qur'an. It's the month of revelation, and this is the month in which the Qur'an was sent down. And we know this through the rhythm of life and how it changes in Ramadan with fasting during the day, but then up with the Qur'an and recitation of the Qur'an and Taraweeh during the night. So these are unscripted sessions on scripture, a little bit of a play of words. Unscripted in the sense that we don't really have an agenda other than to talk to each other and to reflect on scripture and to take scripture as a starting point for conversations about anything that pertains to our faith and the present moment we're living in. So those are some initial thoughts to get us started. And I turn it over to Dr. Timothy, if you'd like to say something. And then we'll each maybe say a word about the first juz, perhaps something that we've been thinking about, and we'll try and separate it through the ajza, which Dr. Timothy will explain over the next 30 days, inshallah. Over to you.
All right. So, by the way, that was Dr. Mahan Mirza, who is our living bridge to the University of Notre Dame, which is the school that I did my undergraduate studies in. And so it's been such a privilege and such an honor to have Dr. Mahan with us at AIC this year. And even after the living bridge, this initial manifestation of the living bridge passes by, as all things in this dunya do, we're going to keep Dr. Mahan close as we journey forward, inshallah. As many people know, the Qur'an, not scripturally, but just by tradition, got kind of cut up into 30 different semi-equal parts as a way of reciting the entire Qur'an during Ramadan, or as a way of kind of portioning the Qur'an out during the nights of Ramadan. And so we're just going to sort of walk through the Qur'an together and with you during these nights. The first juz'a is the first part, the first portion is, of course, the Surah Al-Fatiha, which is the very short surah that opens the Qur'an and that all Muslims recite in their daily prayers. I heard from a scholar just the other day that this is the most recited text in the world, because it's being recited by the 1 billion Muslims on the planet so many times, multiple times a day, and every day throughout the year. And then it includes also about the first 141 verses or ayat of the second surah, which is the longest chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah. And so again, this is not exactly a kind of Quranic study project. It's more of it's a way of celebrating the Quran and really just giving ourselves an informal, unscripted opportunity to ponder its value and its significance and its relevance to what's happening in our lives and what's happening in the world. And so it's with great pleasure then that we'll plunge in. And so what we might do is we might each take if we can say favorite, but a selected sort of theme or portion here, and then we can just dive in and talk about it. So Mahan, what within this first portion really is speaking to you right now?
Thank you, Dr. Timothy. I just want to add that right now you're seeing these two guys. We hope it's not going to be just us, that others will join us, some of our faculty and friends, that they'll actually join us in this live broadcast at some point as time permits and schedules permit. So what's speaking to me, I just read the first juz before we started, and I love to think about the Quran thematically and structurally. So I'm not thinking of a particular verse, but I'm thinking of the movement of ideas. Oftentimes, people say that it's hard to find structure in the text, but I studied with some scholars who really think deeply about the structure, and it's somehow become ingrained in me. And so Al-Fatiha, the opening, as like the set oft repeated verses is mentioned elsewhere in the Quran as something that captures the essence of the book, Ummul Kitab, the essence, with God's mercy, the day of judgment, and the Prophet. He is not mentioned, but when we say Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, guide us. And then Al-Baqarah comes, Dhal Kitabu la rayba fi hudan. We pray for guidance in Al-Fatiha, and the response comes as this is the book, and in it is the guidance. So there's the basic core beliefs are captured there, and then the responses. You can have three basic responses. You can have a response of acceptance, then the Sirat al-Mustaqim. You can have a response of rejection, which is God's anger, and then or I wouldn't say God's anger, it's maghdubi alayhim. So upon whom there can be this ghadab. And the dhalin, and those who perhaps for whatever reason don't actively reject, but just somehow are astray. So there's there's a comprehensiveness to that message, the fronting of rahmah, mercy, which then becomes like a hermeneutic key. Whenever you're in doubt, turn to God's mercy. And then in Al-Baqarah, you have a similar, this is the book, it's an affirmation, the beliefs, alladhina yu'minuna bil ghayb, the basic belief system is given. And then the responses, in alladhina kafaru, those who disbelieve. And then there are those who say they believe, but they don't believe. So the hypocrisy. And then you have the whole story of Adam, the origin story. And then it's the story of the Israelites. So that's the first kind of half. And there's an inclusio. There's a couple of inclusios. Ya Bani Israel.
Yeah.
Oh, children of Israel, we're going to recall the blessings with which I favored you. And then it goes on from there. I noted the verses. Let me see. Verse 40. Actually, there's an earlier, but 40 to 40. Yeah, 40 is the first occurrence, and then 47 and 22, the same verses. So 47 to 22 is the full inclusio where the exact same verse is mentioned. And right after that, it turns to Abraham. وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى Ibrahim, and it mentions Abraham through the trial. So it transcends, the Jewish people, Christians, and Muslims. We have our particularities, but it then transcends particularities of the nations and goes back to Abraham. And that this, the identity is actually Abrahamic, and his marker was belief in one God, so the monotheism. So there's the essence. But then there's the second inclusio, and I'll just end here. This is my what I was getting as I was reading this. Tilka ummatun qad khalat. That's a nation that's gone. Those are people that have passed, and they have what they've earned, and you will have what you earn. And so we shouldn't necessarily be lost in the past. The past is there to inform the present, and it's really what we earn with our own actions and our own response. As Scott Appleby defines religion as a human response to reality perceived as sacred. Our own response is that which will matter. So the tilka ummatun qad khalat, it comes in verse 134 and then again in 141. That's a nation that has gone by. And that's 141 is where the first juz ends.
Right.
And I'll give you a little nugget, and I'll stop there. That Surah Al-Baqarah by Dr. Israr, with whom I studied, he called it Suratul Ummatain, like it's a surah of the two ummas, because here the first part is all about the Israelites, and then the second part is about the Muslims, and it's got 286 verses. And 143, the verse right in the middle, which comes right in the beginning of the next juz.
And we've made you a middle nation.
كَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. So I feel there are isharat. There are isharat. These are like indications in the Qur'an. Not for everybody. They're not necessarily categorical scientific proofs, but for those who choose to believe. So I was just marveling at the structural aspects of the surah as I was going through.
It's really interesting, and it's to me it's fascinating how the voice of the Quran, it's, even though this is an Arabic text, it's addressing the Banu Israel, the Israelites or the children of Jacob, as if they're within earshot, and speaking them to speaking directly to them, and I think this is really really interesting. So call to mind how I favored you and made you excel over the other nations, and do not sell the signs of God for a miserable gain. Don't sell the akhirah, don't sell the next world for a profit in the dunya, and so much of those lessons, of course, are lessons that speak to us even today, and these are not exclusive to the Israelites, but these are lessons for me. For me, although I really I love to ponder the structure of the Quran, and I love the idea of the chiastic structure, the ring structure of the surahs, and it's kind of like a in some ways the Quran becomes this perplexing, asymmetrical, non-linear book that suddenly, if you have certain keys, it all begins to come together, which is really beautiful. But for me, I think there's so many powerful passages that to me stand alone, in these first verses of the Quran, and just powerful verses like the East and the West belong to God, and therefore wherever you turn, there is the wajh, there is the face of God, and the powerful statements about the unity of the prophets and the unity of all the revelations, and that we should not differentiate between any of these messengers of God. We should love them all, and we should honor them all. And then of course this, to me, the passage with Adam and the angels is really one of the most mind-blowing passages in all of the Quran, because this is the only place where we see people, or we see angels or anyone commanded to bow down before something that's not God. And this to me is just such a shocking scene where God gifts Adam. The angels have already complained to God, you're gonna create a caretaker for the earth, someone to rule the earth or to take care of the earth on your behalf, who's gonna like spill blood and do all these terrible things. And of course they were right. And God just says to them, speaking to the angels enigmatically, I know something that you don't. And then he gifts Adam with the knowledge, alayhi salam, with the knowledge of the names, all of them. And then he asks the angels about the knowledge of the names. And the angels, of course, have no idea because God has not gifted them with this knowledge. And then we have Adam teaching the angels the knowledge of the names. And then we have the divine command to the angels to make prostration before Adam, alayhi salam, which to me is just a mind-blowing scene. And the only way that I've ever been able to make sense of this is that among the names that Adam is instructed in, when we read all of the names, that must mean that God's own names were part of that instruction, and that Adam was then now the receptacle of the knowledge of God's own qualities, and has even that human ability in our own imperfect way to cultivate those qualities, not just to understand them, but to manifest those qualities to some extent. And
All
then
right.
God,
this
is mind-blowing. Yeah, go ahead.
It is. I'm going to slow you down because this is a lot, and maybe we can slow down and unpack some of this. Maybe dwell for a little while with these verses of Adam that you've pointed out. And I invite the viewers who are online to feel free to type questions or thoughts, and we'll engage them as we're able. But let me ask you, Dr. Timothy, when the Quran says, when God says in the Quran, "Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa," that I'm going to place on earth a khalifa. What does that mean? You translated it as a caretaker.
Yeah. Khalifa, it's,
the word is for those who don't know Arabic, it's that's the word that's translated as caliph. And so we have popular notions of the caliphate today that are vulgarized perhaps, but the Quranic term is God places on earth Adam as the first caliph. And
the Khalifa. But this is not a political usage of the term, right? That came later. That wasn't.
So tell us, what is it? What does this mean?
Yeah. So a Khalifa is someone who, in my understanding of the Arabic term, someone who stands in for someone else, right? Someone who has a responsibility that is not of his or her own, right? That this is it's a vicarious responsibility, like a steward, to take care of something on behalf of the true owner. And we're in pop culture, we're always, I'm only human, flesh and blood am made. This idea that to be human is to be something like, oh yeah, like I messed up, I'm only human. But the Quranic only human is like, look how the Quran elevates the human form and what it means to be a human being. And so to me, this is like incredible. And
so by this definition or this reading, everybody's like, it's the human condition is one of khilafa.
That's right. And that to be a real human being, it means that we take care, right? We take care of the creation. We don't just take, but we take care. We take care of one another. We take care of ourselves. We take care of what has been entrusted to us to safeguard.
Sure. Got it.
This is what it means to be a human being.
but my mind jumps to, with the political. It's not political, but our politics, our economy, world's operating system is one of taking, of extraction, of maximizing profit and revenue and self-interest. And so doesn't it just so seamlessly translate into a political message of stewardship rather than exploitative governance?
And so thank you, because in that sense it is political. Absolutely. I was thinking of it in the institutional sense,
Right.
the caliphate, what became a political institution, a particular form of governance or a particular model of governance. That's what this is not, right? But this is, I think, political in that wider ethical sense that if we're going to be true to this responsibility for which we were created, then it means we have to roll up our sleeves and be involved. And the moment we're involved is the moment we're acting politically. Absolutely.
Right. And one of the things, we're just looking at this verse for those of you who are trying to follow.
This is ayah 30 and following, just for those of you who want to find it in your Qur'an, of Surah Al-Baqarah, the Surah of the Cow.
Verse number 30 of the second chapter of the Qur'an. We're still on that one verse, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, that I'm going to put this caliph, which we're thinking of as a responsible steward who doesn't just take, but takes care. I love how you put that. But immediately the angels say, when they hear the word caliph, all right, listen, they hear the word caliph, and then they say, the angels say, what? Yeah. Someone who's going to cause mischief and shed blood. And this
even
really
worse
puzzles me.
Like corruption.
Corruption. Yeah. I said call mischief. But they will cause corruption and shed blood. And so there's something in the word, and I think it might be, and I want you to know what you're thinking, that in order to be a steward, a responsible steward, we've got to have my camera's moving around.
It'll come back to you.
I don't know. Told you to do that. And then okay.
Here we go. You got it.
That in order to be a caliph, you have to have agency and choice, perhaps. And human beings are going to be situated differently, and not all of them are going to use the capacities that they have nobly, perhaps. And so it'll necessitate strife. Sometimes you even have strife because two people are well-intentioned, but they misunderstand each other, because we're not omnipotent. We don't know everything. And so, like, jumping ahead to Khidr and Musa, like, when you don't know, you react and you respond in a certain way, even when people are well-intentioned, and it can lead to problems. And so just by the capacities that God was giving Adam and his progeny, the angel said, whoa, hold on, this is going to cause problems. But
agency, I think you're right. Agency is definitely key, and free will and choice. But it seems to me that above all of that is there can be no true stewardship or khilafah without knowledge. Because the crowning attribute of Adam alayhi salam is the knowledge that God gave him. And it was only after he demonstrated that knowledge that the angels were given the shocking command to bow down before him.
And so what does it mean when it says, and these are the verses that follow, but God says, I know, so that you're right. I mean, it's the knowledge, right? First, it's God's knowledge. Like, he tells the angels, I know what you, and then wa'allama, then he taught Adam the names, all of them. What does that mean? All of them.
This is why Yeah, and this is why I think it has to include the divine names. You know, it's the only way I can understand this and make sense of it. I've this
You know,
particular passage.
some
Yeah,
people,
right.
I've you know, interpret this philosophically in that we have the ability to reason and, you know, from particular things abstract to universals, and when we have concepts of universals, we give them names. We name things, and so
Mm.
that's one. But it's it's a philosophical reading that I've heard of this.
But this isn't the act of naming. We're not given the act of naming. We're given the knowledge of the asma kullaha, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah. So we're not given the power of naming. We're given the knowledge
Of the names.
all of the names.
So is this an innate knowledge, or is it a knowledge that we would acquire through generations, you know, as cultural, through cultural continuity and development?
You know, if it's innate, right, then we're kind of back to Plato's concept of recollection, of education as recollection, right? And there's some of
Right.
that in certainly in Islamic mysticism, right? Where I don't think this. I've never been able to find a true a true source for this, but it is true that the medieval Sufis at least used to love this pseudo hadith that whoever knows himself knows his Lord. I've never been able to actually find a credible source for that, but that didn't stop the Sufis from saying it and using it, you know, in the medieval
Right.
period quite
But
frequently.
we have someone in the audience who agrees with you. I want to call out the name, Sister Umayya. We were at Hartford Seminary together. Isra.
Oh wow!
She's a professor now at St. Joseph's, and she says stewardship cannot be separated from iman or surrender and sacred knowing. So it must be divine names.
Go, sister. Yes. So there's one person in the world who doesn't think I'm crazy, but that's great.
I'm sure
and she's a professor.
I'm sure there's more than one.
Yeah. But this is yeah. I mean,
she has a book on miracles in the Qur'an and Sayyid Nursi.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Thank you. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. So yeah, we love participation. If you and who don't mind,
this sister. I think the sister that you've just mentioned. I don't see the screen, so I don't see. But I think I knew her at the University of Virginia. Is that right? She can tell us.
Yes, I think you did. I think you did. Yeah.
I read her thesis. I remember. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
All right, we can't interact like that, but we can take,
sorry. Yeah, but it was talk about recollection. So my old brain was, but you know, so I don't, you know, the idea of knowing as recollection as opposed to learning. I mean, this is an interesting question, and of course there's the question of, you know, the banquet of Alastu bi Rabbikum. You know, this idea that God summoned all of us out of non-existence for a moment. And this isn't in this portion of the Quran, of course. And then for a moment of witnessing, you know, when God asked us, am I not your Lord? And according to that Quranic, you know, that enigmatic Quranic verse, we were all there and we all answered, you know, yes, absolutely. And then we were all returned to non-existence until our appointed times. And so, so the knowledge of that moment, right, I guess mystically speaking, could be said to be embedded into the very core of human nature. Again, you know, we're talking about lofty human nature, not the human nature of popular music.
Right. Okay. You know, Sister Umayya, I got distracted by the comment. She said, yes, you were on my dissertation committee.
Yes, I remember now. Yes.
So you have to remember. Brother Randall also, he commented that, you know, there's another place in the Quran, obviously, we'll get to it. وَمَا تَفَرَّقُوا إِلَّا مِن بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ ilm. So people are also, until knowledge comes to them, they were united. But when knowledge came to them, and then there, I think ilm is being referred to as wahi. So it's a knowledge that comes to us in this world. And so there may be different meanings of ilm, from different contexts in the verses.
Sure.
Yeah. I also, it occurred to me as you were talking about the Platonic, innate knowledge and alast, the kind of primordial existence in before we came into this world. The Aboriginals in Australia, they speak of what's called a pattern mind, pattern ignition, and we're highly complex beings, and when we see things around us, we are able to discern patterns, and that's a certain kind of knowledge as well. But there's an imprint, something inside of us that resonates, and so maybe it's that there's what's inside, if it's alive and maybe in touch with, hasn't been corrupted, or you haven't lost touch with it, then it can interact with the world with this kind of ability to recognize what was taught. Wallahu alam. I mean, this is unscripted.
We're thinking out loud, but this is this is a form of dhikrullah, of the remembrance of God, right? We are pondering this incredible book which has been given to us, and by pondering it and thinking out loud, and we're not only are we exploring its meanings, but we're also trying to make it make sense for us in our often bewildering and soul-crushing existence here. So wow.
Also, one of the interesting things that I've come across before at some point, I'm not sure what significance it is, but just the word Khalifa, Caliph, is linguistically feminine.
Yeah.
So it's just a nice nice thing.
Like Rahma.
Like Rahma, like mercy. Yeah.
Another one, linguistically feminine.
Right.
Yeah. Can we go back to the Fatiha for a second? I know that we could,
sure.
that we talked about the danger of spending the whole night on the Fatiha.
No, let's do that. And I'll just maybe project. We'll be here for about another 10 minutes. We were thinking every night 30 to 45 minutes or so, just so we can keep it manageable. People have other things to do. And so we can keep up with this regularly with vigor and and the energy that it requires. So about maybe another 10 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, it's good for me. But
go for Al-Fatiha then.
Okay. And are there any comments or questions that have come in? I don't want to speak over the sisters and brothers who are with us in YouTube.
No, keep going.
Okay. So I want you to tell me if I'm crazy, but so much of the spiritual life is based upon holding oneself to account and being self-reflective. And I know that often there are all kinds of ways in which these verses, especially the people mentioned in these verses, can sometimes be politically assigned or be so. And I think there's always a danger in when we ascribe evil or iniquity or wrongdoing to others, and we don't first see that capacity for wrongdoing within ourselves. And so, sometimes I read the Qur'an, when I read Surah Al-Fatiha, when I'm talking about, guide us along the path, ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, path of uprightness, sirat al-ladina an'amta alayhim, the path of those whom you bless, ghayr al-maghdubi alayhim, not those who are overshadowed by anger, wala ad-dallin, and nor those who wander without guidance. I've often been struck by the realization that sometimes I'm asking God to save me from my own capacity to be maghdubi alayhim, to be overshadowed by anger. And again, it's ambiguous. We don't know if these are people that God is angry with, or whether these are people whose souls are just eaten away by anger, and so they're overshadowed by it. But either way, we know that anger is something that the Prophet ﷺ was always encouraging his companions to let go of. Don't be angry. Don't be angry. And and then the abilities, but certainly I have the capacity to be in that state, and also the state of wandering without guidance. Sometimes even we know the right thing and so we still do the wrong thing, or sometimes we're just we're just stumbling around without the guidance clear in our mind or guiding us. And so I often think that before I think of these people that I'm asking God not to place me among them, that before I think of them as people in the exterior world, I'm also thinking of the kind of these as characters within my own psychodrama, that these are manifestations of Timothy that I'm asking God to help me not be in that state or in that manifestation, but help me to walk that path of uprightness. But maybe I'm just the crazy only person who thinks of these kinds of things. But I often read the Surah Al-Fatiha kind of intramentally in that way, understanding that I certainly have the capacity to be among the Daleen, and I certainly have the capacity to be among the Al-Maghdubi alayhim, those who are overshadowed by.
Yeah, those who are astray or those who are overshadowed by anger. You know, something I thought of the other day for the first time. Imagine, reciting Al-Fatiha all your life, and then something new dawns on you, which is one of the reasons why there's this hadith, although I just read it today thinking about this session. It's in the Jami of Imam al-Tirmidhi. It's classified as weak, but Dr. Israr used to, cite it with on the authority of Ali radiallahu anhu. The Prophet was talking to him, and he said, "Innaha satakunu fitna," like there'll be a fitna, and he immediately asks, "Mal makhraju minha," like what's going to be the way out of it? Instead of asking what are its signs and tell me about what is, he's asking the question.
Again, for those who don't speak Arabic, explain what fitna for everyone.
Yeah, there'll be tribulation, time of trial, of great, calamity, like an apocalyptic time, perhaps. Fitna, it could also be, civil war, strife. And so he asks, what will be the way out? And the Prophet says, the book of God. And then there's a whole litany of reasons why. But it informs you of what's to come, and it tells you of what has gone before. And it's the rope of God, strong. And then it says, "La yashba'u minhu al-ulama," like the scholars never are satiated from this. It keeps giving. It keeps giving. La tanqadi ajaibuhu. Its wonders will never cease. And so, in the beginning, there's Rahman and Rahim, which is a variation of the same word, a different form, from Raham, its source being the womb of the mother.
Yes.
And the word means mercy. I mean, that if anyone knows a mother's love, you will understand the meaning of love and mercy. And so God is Ar-Rahman and Rahim. And the way that this has been explained to me is Rahman, al-awazn fa'alan, is this highly, like it's Rahman can be volatile and spontaneous and, almost an ecstatic kind of love that overflows. And the Rahim is more a love that dwells forever. So, you could be you could be angry with your child or disciplining your child, but you're still Rahim because you love the child, right? But in that Rahman, when it's over. And so I feel almost a little bit of a parallel with Maghdubi alayhim wala dhalin, in the tenor of, or the contrast between these two emotions. Where ghadab is, this almost more fitful and frightful state, whereas the daleen is a more permanent kind of state of being. But anyways, that was one thing that occurred to me, and maybe this was a bit too obscure for some. Charlie Pine, a friend of mine, Charlie Pine, is online. He says, I love Timothy's perspective. Reminds me of parts theory as developed for internal family systems model for therapy.
Okay, I'm
also,
going to write that down. What's the theory again?
Parts theory.
Okay, good.
That's the parts theory. You can look that up. Also, Tahira Ahmed is on. She mentioned going back to Khalifa. Khalifa is etymologically very rich and interesting, and can also mean, successor. So, and one of the meanings of it in political thought is the one who succeeds the prophet, just simply that way. And if we think of it that way, it becomes even more interesting as the human being succeeding God in a kind of agency, like he leaves us. He leaves us. He gives us a long rope on earth, and this is one of the reasons why we can reflect his qualities. Sibghatullah. This was in the first juz part, the hue of God, and be godlike. But we can also then, when those are out of balance, cause great corruption.
Wow. Excellent. So, Sidi Mahan, I think maybe we're at 43 minutes past the hour.
Yeah.
And I could definitely go on, but I don't want to wear out you or our sisters and brothers who are joining us on YouTube. So,
sure, I think this is good. I'm gonna flash our little barcode. I forgot to do that. Fuel the vision. If anyone, this is part of the team's directive.
And for those, maybe everyone on the YouTube already knows, but we live in a country that is just that is flowered with so many wonderful academic institutions of higher education, and but we're at a moment of the Muslim community institutional evolution here in North America. We have only two independent Muslim institutions of higher education that have achieved full academic accreditation. And AIC, we're grateful to be one of those two. And AIC was the very first independent Muslim institution of higher education to be established in America. And now we're just one of two only fully accredited independent Muslim institutions of higher education in America. And go ahead.
Yeah, and others are coming up, and it's great to see. So,
yeah, and we're lending a helping hand wherever we can to see the proliferation of this and this wonderful institutional flowering, here in North America. But we are really grateful to be here, and Mahan, I'm grateful to have you as my conversation partner here. It's
thank you.
I'm learning a lot. I took notes tonight, so I have some things to look up after tonight.
Well, this is terrific. Thank you, Dr. Timothy. Thanks to all tuning in. And I love to see so much, such a wonderful group of people online. We hope to see you again. And some of you should come on this side of the screen.
That's right.
Inshallah, in future episodes. So we'll be unscripted together.
We'll be here every night of Ramadan, inshallah.
Inshallah. Have a blessed month, and we'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. We'll close maybe with Surah Al-Asr. That's a nice,
absolutely
nice
lead us, Sidi.
way to close. And maybe it's a teaser, because when we get to the last nights, maybe we'll explain Surah Al-Asr. But it's what we're going to recite. It's a short surah, chapter of the Qur'an. So, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be with you all.
Wa alaikum assalam. Ramadan Mubarak, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.